Métis peoples for their valuable past and present contributions to this land. We also recognize and respect the cultural diversity that First Nations, Inuit, Métis people have brought to the city of Kemptville. I would like to talk a little bit about the protocols and technologies for tonight's engagement session. So all participants have been muted and will be unmuted by the host for the question and answer period. By hovering your mouse over the top of your screen, you will see what we call view options. Click this button to change your view. In other words, if you want to exit full view or side-by-side mode. If you are having any IT issues, please use the Zoom FAQ. We will add that in the chat, the link for that. And the Solicitor General has also made available technical support at the 2 phone numbers that you see below. In terms of conduct, it's very important that everybody conducts themselves in a respectful and appropriate manner. Participants who conduct themselves in a disruptive manner or inappropriate manner, i.e. coarse language, disrespectful comments, yelling, etc., will be muted by myself and will receive 1 warning. I will invite you back in, and after that we will continue. If ever the behavior continues in a very inappropriate manner, this could result in the facilitator muting the individual and moving on to another participant, and in a worst case scenario, expulsion from the engagement session. So I really want us to work together so that this does not happen. The session and related materials will be presented in English. Si vous désirez fournir vos commentaires ou poser vos questions en français, il me fera plaisir de les traduire pour notre panel et de traduire la réponse pour vous si nécessaire. When it comes time to the Q&A session, if you are calling in by phone, in other words, you're not using a PC or a mobile device, it's simply a phone, we will ask you to raise your hand on the phone by pressing number 9, star 9, to indicate that you have a question or a comment. Individuals on the phone will be invited and will be identified by the last 4 digits of your phone number. There is a 2-minute time limit for verbal questions and comments. Those of you that are participating by PC and mobile device, the chat function will be enabled at the start of the Q&A period. Send your questions, comment to the individual identified in the chat as questions host. This individual can be selected once we get into and open the chat mode. What's very important here, again, like the people on the phone, you will have a 2-minute time limit to present your verbal questions. Those of you that want to send a question, you will type in your question in the chat and just hit enter. What's important is I will give you a 15-second notice when you are approaching the end of your 2 minutes. I would like to ask the panel to introduce themselves, and we'll just go down the list the way it's there. So I'll invite Ali Vishkini to start the presentations, and then we will have them go down the line so you understand who is part of the panel for this engagement session.
Thank you very much, Daniel. My name is Ali Vishkini, and I'm the executive in charge for the governance of this project. But not only this project, other successful projects that we have in Thunder Bay and some recent ones that we in Kenora as well.
Good evening. My name is Karen Ellis, and I am the Assistant Deputy Minister for Institutional Services. I have the oversight and responsibility for the 25 adult correctional facilities that we operate across the province of Ontario. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Renu Kalendran. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister responsible for Community Services. That is for the Ministry's Probation and Parole Program, and am responsible for the over 200 probation parole offices, remote reporting centers, and satellite offices in Ontario.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lynn Norris. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister for the Modernization Division at the Ministry of the Solicitor General.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mena Zaffino, Assistant Deputy Minister of Operational Support Division with the Ministry of the Solicitor General.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Angelo Gismondi, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Infrastructure Ontario, and I'll be responsible for delivering this project through to operational phase.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Green. I'm the Director of the Facilities and Capital Planning Branch within the Ministry of the Solicitor General and responsible for the oversight of the delivery of these projects, not just the Kemptville one, but also the Thunder Bay, as well as the recent announcements around Thunder Bay. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Kiley. I'm the Manager of Major Projects for the Solicitor General.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Leonzakis. I'm the manager of the Major Capital Projects Unit for the Institutional Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Bauman. I'm project lead with Institutional Services.
Thank you, and I believe Lisa is with us as well. Okay, sorry about that. We'll continue. So the purpose of the engagement session tonight is really to provide a preliminary overview of the vision for the new Eastern Ontario Correctional Complex, listen to your perspectives and provide additional information where necessary, identify outstanding questions for the ministry to consider, and begin the engagement journey, which will continue over the next several years. So before we get into the presentation, I'd just like to present the agenda for this evening. So Lynn Norris and Karen Ellis will present us an introduction and an overview of justice, the justice sector transformation and correctional services. Karen, Ali, and then Angela will then provide a description of the project. We will take a 10-minute break after these first two presentations. Then Karen and Renu will talk about the community impact. Angelo and Ali will follow up with the next steps. And finally, the bulk of the session will be reserved for our Q&A session. So right now, I would like to invite Ali Veshkini to do opening remarks.
Thank you, Daniel. I'll keep my remarks short because really, truly today, we want to hear from obviously the community and really have a dialogue. So I'll say three quick things. First, we are absolutely happy to be here. We like doing these engagements. We've had successful engagements in Thunder Bay and Kenora, and so we are happy to be here and starting this engagement. With respect to engagement, this is actually a journey. This is the start of the engagement. This is not the end of the engagement. And so there'll be iterative engagement throughout this process. When we come to talk about the project timelines, you'll see that engagement permeates throughout the life of this project. And so again, this is the start of the journey. This is not the last you'll hear from us. This is not the last time we will be engaging with our partners, local service providers, and or the local community directly. And thirdly, today is really here about hearing about from local voices. This session is for the people of Kemptville and the surrounding area, for them to have a chance to ask questions, for them to have a chance to voice their local concerns, and for us to have a dialogue with them. I know there are people in this session that are from various other areas, and we welcome you. Absolutely, we're happy to have you. But please, we want to show deference to the local voices. And lastly, I definitely want to thank Her Worship, the Mayor of Kemptville, for continuing to voice the need for these types of engagements, as well for Minister Clark, who as well has been instrumental in helping us, along with Her Worship, to continue this engagement and to bring this engagement forward soon after the announcement. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Sally. Hi, everyone. My name, as I introduced myself earlier, is Lynn Norris, and I lead a modernization division at the Ministry of the Attorney General that is focused on how we can transform criminal justice across the sector. So before we get into describing what the Eastern Ontario Correctional Complex is going to look like, I've been asked to provide you with some context around how the investment in this new facility brings us closer to achieving our overall broader vision of creating a forward-thinking and accessible criminal justice system in Ontario, one that supports crime prevention and successful reintegration while protecting public safety. So there are three key areas that our criminal justice sector transformation has been focused on. The first one is reducing the number of people coming into custody through targeted interventions and by addressing the root causes of crime. So again, a focus on how do we reduce the number of people who come into contact with the criminal justice system. One example of initiatives designed to achieve this area of focus are the community safety and well-being planning framework that encourages communities to adopt collaborative approaches to proactively identifying and addressing local priority risks in the community before they escalate and end up in a situation of crisis. So many communities, including in the Eastern Ontario area, have created what we call situation tables. And a situation table really consists of human service providers from different sectors working together to provide an immediate, coordinated, and integrated response to address often complex situations facing individuals or families who are at an acutely elevated level of risk. As a result, a customized multidisciplinary intervention takes place, usually within 24 to 48 hours, to help to mitigate those risks and avoid possible involvement from an emergency responder. So for example, if a mental health service provider meets with a client that is experiencing additional risks related to maybe eviction, food insecurity, or another type of instability within the family unit, they have a mechanism based on an established network, a situation table, to develop a customized plan of care to deliver an integrated service solution to address all of the needs of that particular individual or family that's been identified at risk. Another area of focus for a more holistic criminal justice sector transformation is how we can use innovative tools and technologies to improve integration across the system and enhance accessibility, from police to courts through to corrections. And one example of this area of focus is a recent shift to the virtual court model to allow for in-custody people to be able to to appear for court appearances without the need to transport them from the institution to the courthouse, but for them to be able to access through video or audio technology those court appearances. And this is important because often those court appearances are relatively short, and being able to appear remotely means that there's less disruption to that person's programming in the institution and access to other supports that are available within the institution that aren't available at the courthouse. The final area of focus for justice transformation that I wanted to highlight is renovating our outdated infrastructure and building new correctional facilities, leading us to a path of economic recovery for local communities. And as a few of my colleagues have already mentioned, this includes several projects across the province, such as building a new correctional center in Thunder Bay, replacing the Brockville jail with a newer facility, and also building a new correctional complex in Kemptville, the Eastern Ontario Correctional Complex, or the EOCC. This new complex will be designed to create a more modern and safe environment, both for people in custody, in care in the institution, and also for the hardworking frontline staff. And it will help to address overcrowding in other institutions in the Eastern region. And again, some of my colleagues will be sharing more detailed information about the complex with you shortly. Moving to the next slide, I just wanted to talk a bit about how we are collaborating across the sectors. So we know that many people who become involved with the criminal justice sector are already impacted by challenges related to stable housing, literacy, trauma, mental health, and addiction. And that's why we're taking an integrated approach to how we transform the justice sector, and why partnerships across the sector, including policing, prosecution, defense counsel, and legal aid, the courts, as well as other sectors within and the communities, are so critical to achieving this vision. This does include the social services sector, health, housing, education, as well as the justice sector, policing, courts, and corrections. To strengthen prevention by addressing underlying social needs, and to improve outcomes by expanding community-based supports to help people who have become engaged with the criminal justice system to be able to access the services that they need that address some of those underlying causes that have resulted in a criminal charge in the first place. So in addition to the example of the situation tables that I mentioned earlier, I wanted to mention some other examples of this integrated approach. One of these examples is justice centers, which are being piloted in a few locations across the province. These are centers that are designed to bring justice, health, and social services together to help connect individuals to resources that address the underlying causes of criminal behavior while holding them accountable. Another example of the integrated approach are initiatives designed to support accused people to remain in their home community while their criminal case is being resolved, rather than holding them in custody pending the outcome of their charges. So this can include things like bail bed programs that are designed to support release for people who are experiencing homelessness, as well as bail verification and supervision programs to provide additional support to people who may otherwise have difficulty complying with their release conditions while they remain in the community. This type of integration is a key part of the government's plan to transform the criminal justice system and improve outcomes for individuals and for communities. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to my colleague, Karen Ellis, who's going to provide an overview of correctional services within Ontario.
Thank you very much, Lynn, and pleased to talk through this slide. The first thing I'd like to say is the government has obviously been very clear in its level of commitment to support correctional services across the province, with an investment of $500 million over 5 years for infrastructure improvements and to allow us to hire additional staff. Additional staff will help ensure that our ministry improves support for individuals with mental health and addiction issues and those who are in segregation conditions. The infrastructure projects include the recently announced expansion projects at Thunder Bay Correctional Centre and Kenora Jail, as well as investment to modernize and build additional capacity in the eastern region of Ontario. These investments are being made to help us handle and avoid overcrowding in our institutions and to create additional space for programs to support rehabilitation and the safe reintegration into society of those who have been in custody. Correctional services is composed of 3 divisions: institutional services, the one that I am responsible for, which currently operates 25 adult institutions in Ontario, housing a range of inmates, approximately 6,500 across the province, of various security classifications. My colleague Renew introduced herself earlier. She is responsible for Community Services Division, and it operates 119 probation and parole offices, up to 200 with the various satellite ones that she mentioned, across Ontario. And there are over 30,000 individuals serving community-based sentences. That represents over 80% of the total number of individuals under our ministry's supervision. Operational support, my colleague Mena, provides service and supports to institutional services and to community services, including staff training, operational policy development, communication services, offender program development and evaluation, healthcare services, and business continuity planning. Outside of the immediate Ottawa area, the majority of our Ottawa Carleton Detention Centre staff live south of Highway 417 in communities that they serve and protect, making Kemptville a central location for many of them. And we go on to the next slide. Thank you. So now I'd like to talk to you about the plan of what this new facility will be like. The Eastern Ontario Correctional Complex is a working name or project name. It is consistent with the naming conventions we have for several other of our institutions in Ontario. The construction of the state-of-the-art institution will meet or exceed industry standards for a correctional facility. It will be very safe and very secure, and it's projected to house 235 beds. The complex will house both men and women inmates, remanded and sentenced. And remanded means people who have either not yet been tried or have been tried and not yet sentenced. So there will be a mix of those people in this facility. And they will be at all security levels, but primarily those classified as minimum and medium security. The existing Ottawa Carleton Detention Centre currently has 621 beds. It will be downsized at the appropriate time to a lower number, but that number will remain fluid and flexible, giving us some surge capacity to allow us to respond to any regional trends in inmate count in the next few years. Ottawa Carleton Detention Centre will maintain a primary focus on housing and programming for remanded inmates in a higher security classification. This will allow us to manage capacity more effectively at both institutions. The new facility will focus on enhanced programming geared toward improving rehabilitation and reducing the risk of reoffending. Our goal is to have the inmates in our custody return to their communities better equipped to successfully reintegrate into society. We aim to achieve that goal by improving the overall environment for those in our custody and care, compared with the harsher correctional practices of the past, which were not designed to promote rehabilitation. We call this newer, more modern approach normalization, and I'm going to talk more about what that means specifically in a few minutes. As Lynn mentioned, our video court suites, which increase virtual court attendance, are very helpful, and they do reduce inmate movement outside of the institution. I'm going to ask Ali now just to comment on the actual project delivery that you see at the bottom of the slide on the public-private partnership aspect of this project.
Thank you, Karen. When we speak of private-public partnerships, really what we're trying to do is bring a consortium or a team of private sector entities that can come together, and we enlist the help of our partner Infrastructure Ontario to do this. And what the private sector partners do is they really come together to design, build, finance, and maintain that infrastructure for us. And it's just like a mortgage to a house where it's turnkey, where you come in and you take over the house and think of a new build. And once you start living in that house, you start paying a mortgage. And so that's how those four elements are brought together. And just like a condo corporation, the key here is that the maintenance will be taken care of in that asset, just like any condo corporation building. And the real benefit of that is that they maintain that asset to a quality that it was the first day that it was built. You will see some depictions when we move further into this presentation of what we are trying to build, the design excellence and the modern design that we are trying to achieve. And the maintenance part of that really couples well with those design elements, because it ensures that asset will be maintained properly for 30 years. And so you will not have a degradation of that facility. And it will, in 30 years, it will still look the way it does on the first day. And then what will happen is that'll actually increase the life of that asset as well, so that as a community piece of infrastructure, you will never see that degradation. And so that's what we are happy about with this partnership, is being able to really maintain that facility and get a design excellence. So if we can go to the next slide. In terms of site selection, I know we want to talk about this a little more today and later on in the Q's and A's, but what we want to talk is, how did we come to the selection of this site? Initially, in terms of selecting a site and disclosing that site. We never usually disclose a site. Other examples are Thunder Bay, Windsor, and that's for commercial sensitivities. And that's why we don't at the outset come out and say we are thinking about this site, because we want to make sure that those commercial aspects remain sensitive and that we don't have developers or other people undertaking certain actions just because they know that information. In terms of then how we selected the site, this project is falling behind in terms of our initial timelines, and that is because we could not find a site. And what was happening for us is that we were being outbid. We were finding that the private lands that we were having were ranging in the millions of dollars, $10 to $40 million to be able to purchase, and that's not good value for money for the taxpayer. The site that we chose was already in the government portfolio. It was of the appropriate size to fit the facility, as well as having excess lands as well to ensure that we can set back that piece of infrastructure, that we can put appropriate greenery around it as well, to make sure that we have that design excellence. It's also within the catchment of the Greater Ottawa area, and it's also adjacent to the 416, which allows us to get access in and out for our service providers, for our staff as well. And with respect to our staff, the location is really in the middle of a lot of where our staff live currently. Staff that live kind of below the 417, and it's really in terms of east and west in the middle. So it's easy access for our staff. Another piece that was really critical for us was that there is no impediments to the land, meaning that there was no lien or third-party rights. We have looked at other lands that were around the area, but some of them did have third-party lands or didn't meet our liens or rights against them, or didn't meet our criteria, and that was very difficult for us. We are already a year and a half behind in this project, and so we could not undertake selecting a site where we knew there would be a third-party right against it. And we want to respect that third-party right, absolutely. But secondly, we did not want to have to wait until that right is absolved or resolved. And so we didn't want to continue to push, the delay in this project for another 6 month, year or plus. And so those were really the pieces to the site selection. What we want to do now is, what I want to do, is talk about the agricultural aspect of this site. We have heard from residents, we have heard from political officials, and we understand how important this is from a heritage perspective in terms of agricultural. And as you can see on the picture to your right, we are not taking up the majority of the site. There is still a lot of abundance of land around that site. And what we want to do is work with the local community to figure out how can we maintain that agricultural heritage of that site. But not only maintain, we want to actually enhance. So we want to, when we talk about community benefits a little further in this presentation, I really want to enforce that we want to work with the local community to figure out what can we do with that land so that it actually is enhanced, whether if it's from an agricultural perspective or a recreational perspective. We do not want to hoard the excess lands. We want to work with the community to figure out actually how to enhance those lands. And that's really what we want to talk about when we continue to engage with you iteratively throughout this process. After this slide, what we want to do is talk about the design features, and I'll hand it over to Karen, and her and I will probably go a little back and forth during this part of the session.
Thank you. For a minute there, I couldn't unmute. I would like to just draw your attention, please, just to this photograph. I want to talk a little bit about medical services. And I want to first start by saying that the ministry is really committed to providing high quality primary care and mental health care services to our inmate population. Over the last 2 years, we've been modernizing our healthcare services, including the design of the physical space where those services are provided to our inmates. So if you look at this photograph, you'll see on the left-hand side the current state in one of our institutions of where the primary care and the medical attention is given. And you see on the right-hand side an illustration of what we would be building into the new facility in Kemptville, very modern, upgraded, and well-designed place to provide those services. Physicians and nurse practitioners provide primary care in our provincial correctional facilities. All of our facilities have registered nurses on staff who provide the majority of healthcare in collaboration with other providers. Many of our facilities have pharmacists and pharmacy technicians, as well as space to accommodate some limited dental and optometry services. All of our institutions have access to the Ontario Telemedicine Network, which allows us to virtually connect patients with off-site specialty care. Mental health nurses, psychologists, social workers, and addictions counselors provide care to our inmates. We also ensure that all of our facilities have access to a psychiatrist. Over the past couple of years, we've expanded the specialty mental health and addiction supports that we provide to inmates on site, while also ensuring that patients who need advanced care can be provided that care in hospital. For example, last December, we announced 5 acute care stabilization beds at Ontario Shores, which are dedicated for female inmates with acute mental health needs at the Vanier Centre for Women. Local community partnerships with hospitals and other health and social service providers are really critical to being able to provide safe and appropriate care within institutions, but also in order to facilitate continuity of care and safe transitions back into people's communities. While the majority of healthcare services can be delivered on site, particularly in our newer facilities where we have built infirmaries, there are patients who sometimes require acute care, for example, a life-threatening event, or they may need surgery, and they would be sent to the local hospital with security escorts. Closer to implementation, we will work with the local hospital and regional Ontario health team to determine appropriate protocols and processes with respect to the admittance of inmates from the new facility. When inmates are discharged back to their communities, and the majority of them want to go back to their own community from where they lived and where they came from, our healthcare teams work collaboratively with discharge planners in the institutions and the Provincial Ministry of Health workers who do complex case management work to support people with mental health issues who are leaving the correctional institution. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. I'd like to talk now a little bit about the inmate living areas, because I spoke earlier about trying to create a more progressive, more normalized environment for the people in our custody. If you take a look at the photo, you can see on the left, this is a picture from Ottawa Carleton Detention Centre on the left. And then if you look on the right, you'll see what our vision is for the future state for the inmates. This would be what we call a day room. And you can see that we're thinking about things. When we say a normalized environment, we mean things like natural light in the inmate living areas, softer furnishings throughout the institution, increased access to programming. So we offer, there's 8 different types of programming, from life skills to Indigenous and cultural programming, volunteer work, all kinds of things that will be figured out in terms of what is the best programming needed for the people that are in the institution. There's increased access to fresh air and outdoor spaces, increased access and improved visiting options when families want to see their loved ones. We're going to also encourage routine interactions between staff and inmates by placing correctional officers directly inside the inmate living units, and we call this the direct supervision model. That approach is considered best correctional practice when physical design enables this model to be used. Overall, reports have been consistent in finding that direct supervision has led to improved inmate and staff safety. It has reduced assaults and other serious incidents, and lower construction costs when compared with traditional correctional models that don't allow for that supervision model. The other point I want to say is that we're also going to have single cell accommodation in the new facility to respect people's modesty and privacy. As I'm sure many of you can imagine, Our correctional institutions provide a very challenging work environment. And it's really important. As I said, this was OCDC on the left, and on the right, it's a more modern unit. It's actually from the Southwest Detention Center in Maidstone, Ontario. So we've built that. That's what it looks like. And it's really important to remember many of our employees will spend 30 or more years working in our institutions to keep our communities safe. And it's very important for us to provide them with a better, more positive workspace as well. The late Nelson Mandela once said, "No one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails." A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones. The Mandela Rules for the treatment of prisoners is an internationally recognized set of guidelines that have assisted in shaping correctional reform. Our dated infrastructure was created with a less progressive mindset. It focused on warehousing rather than rehabilitation. 99% of our inmates return to their respective communities. New institutions that are progressive and modern with this type of approach we're talking about are our opportunity to focus design and programming efforts to reduce recidivism. Next slide, please. I do want to talk about the outdoor space briefly. Again, you can see on the left-hand side, and I've certainly been there myself, you can see an inmate outdoor space at the Ottawa Carleton Detention Centre on the left, compared with a concept of what an inmate outdoor space may look like within the perimeter walls of the future Eastern Ontario Correctional Complex. It really illustrates what I was talking about around creating a more normal and positive environment. The addition of green space in any correctional setting provides a therapeutic space for both inmates and staff, and potentially for visitors as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Karen. If I may, just 2 points of emphasis before we get into local and economic benefits. What we are trying to do here today is when we build that asset is really try to show that we're trying to build a sustainable asset, meaning that, whether if it's healthcare or programming or other service needs of our clients, that we are managing that in-house as much as possible so that there is no strain on the local community or broadly. As well, I think hopefully what is displayed or illustrated from those pictures is that we want to take those predominantly, let me take a step back. It's unfortunate that, we live in a society and a world in general that, we continue to have the need for jails in these types of buildings. However, what we are trying to do with our transformational agenda and what we are trying to do with building this asset, and hopefully the illustration of the pictures show this, is that we're trying to take those predominantly minimum to medium security clients that we have and really rehabilitate them. And psychologically, from going from single cell, from having single cells so that they have their own space, to the day room that you saw with the natural light and the ability to move around and interact, as well as you saw from the outdoor space that we have, we are truly trying to rehabilitate them. And so that when they go back to their community, they do not reoffend. And that is a part of our transformational continuum. And so hopefully you were able to see that from the pictures and from Karen's words. With respect to local and economic benefits, I'm going to talk about the right-hand side of the slide, the left-hand side of the slide, and I'll let my partner, Angelo Gismondi from Infrastructure Ontario, hit a few points for the right-hand side of the slide. With respect to local benefits, we can split them into 2 buckets. The first one is benefits during construction. During construction, there are several benefits. Usually what we've seen from other projects that we have is it really draws on local labor to come and help with the construction of that asset. So whether if it's local construction people, local trades, or even local businesses that help supply the goods or services during construction. As well, we see obviously an influx of local buying, whether if it's coffee shops, hospitality, food, or other type of shopping, and then subcontracting as well, as I touched on a little earlier. during construction. There could be gravel, there could be lumber, concrete, or just smaller other subcontracting as well. That's from local or immediate areas. In terms of ongoing benefits, so once construction is done, the ongoing benefits that we see is, one is there's additional staff that have to come and operate the new facility. So obviously it creates a boom in terms of jobs. Next, buying local as well. So people are coming into that facility, staff are coming into that facility, so they are buying local coffee, meals, hospitality, or other things during their lunch breaks or post work, as well as other subcontractor opportunities, whether if it's landscaping, grass cutting, snow removal, and potentially other smaller also subcontracting. And then potentially positive real estate impact. We have seen, and Rob Green will talk about this on a few slides coming up, is that we don't see a degradation of housing prices in other communities that we've been in. We actually see that in other communities that we have facilities in, we see an encroachment and an abutment of the lands beside us, and people are flourishing in terms of land development and housing, and they're abutting our facilities and cohabitating in an absolute fair way. So in terms of the benefits during and after, there are absolutely local economic benefits, but beyond just the local economic benefits, what I want to talk about is community benefits. And those benefits for us is when we sit and really talk with the local community to figure out what else can we do to help promote the community. We've done this in Southwest Detention Center, which is in Windsor, where we worked with the community to figure out that there was a gap in recreational fields for them. So we built recreational fields so that youth and adults can come use those fields. We also actually built a gym within the institution where the community comes and uses it, and it's booked continually on a daily basis, where the community comes and uses that gym either for volleyball or basketball or floor hockey or other sports. And so we want to work with that community to figure out how can we build something into the asset that might help you fill a gap. How can we build something outside of that asset that also might help enhance or fill a gap? But as I said before, we also want to figure out how can we not just preserve the cultural and agricultural space that's there, but enhance it. So we are happy to work with you to look at greenhouse or other projects that truly will help enhance those lands, parks, whatever we can do that helps enhance that land. And so that's really what the message that we're here to say today. This is not the first you'll hear about that, and we will continue to work with the local community to figure out what is that enhancement that they need. So if I may, I'll hand it over to Angelo Gismondi just to talk a little about the case study and the higher level economic impacts.
Thanks, Ali. So it's the government of Ontario has been investing in critical infrastructure for the people of Ontario. There's currently a pipeline in the order of magnitude of 60 billion, including social and civil infrastructure. This is particularly important in this unprecedented COVID times, as infrastructure development will play a key role in the economic recovery. However, the job creation doesn't stop at the construction phase. Upon completion, it's expected that the facility will have north of 200 staff, creating quality long-term jobs. And as Ali has stated, the Southwest Detention Center, for instance, at the peak of construction, had approximately 200 workers on site and had an average of 80% coming from the surrounding area. Another example of these benefits is the Durham Region Courthouse project. It's estimated that about 1,500 people will conduct business daily in the new facility, bringing increased demand for restaurant meals, office space, and other services in downtown Oshawa. Courthouse employees and visitors will bring an estimated $7 million per year in additional spending to the city of Oshawa. So as you can see, there's a lot of benefits that can be had for implementing these projects, not only throughout the construction period, but well into the operational phase. Those were some of the bigger projects, but one last point to consider is that Infrastructure Ontario and the Ministry of the Solicitor General have built in urban areas and have also built in very small communities, such as Napanee, where the Quinte Detention Center is located. Next slide, please. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is LEED design standards. The concern with sustainability is in the forefront of Infrastructure Ontario projects. To date, IO has achieved a minimum of LEED certification in 62 projects. For those who are not familiar with it, LEED is a set of design standards that focus on making the building more sustainable and focus on three factors: reducing capital and operational costs by selecting and right-sizing mechanical and electrical equipment, for example, water-efficient taps, heat recovery chillers, correct lighting, etc. Improving occupant comfort, for example, selecting low VOC materials, that's VOC, volatile organic compounds, and improving thermal comfort within the facility. Reducing or eliminating negative environment impacts such as construction and demolition waste management. Site construction waste is diverted. In doing this, site construction waste is diverted from landfill. Another example of LEED is a space for bicycle storage and shower facilities for staff. The Southwest Detention, other examples of previous LEED projects is the Southwest Detention Center, which was the last facility built by Solgen in Windsor, Ontario, and achieved LEED Silver. Now, in LEED Silver, it's a higher certification than just LEED certification, and some of the highlights and features of a silver, as was achieved in the Windsor facilities, is that it had a solar reflective roof membrane over 75% of the effective roof area to reduce the heat island effect. There was reduction of water use by not having an irrigation system and by specifying water-saving plumbing fixtures. And at least 10% of the materials were specified as being sourced regionally. Now, regionally meaning 800 kilometers by truck or 25 kilometers by rail or sea. It's worthy of note that the target was exceeded and the project achieved over 50%, which is really excellent. So on the next slide is the Class EA. I'd like to talk a little bit about. Infrastructure Ontario has a very comprehensive site due diligence process that includes detailed reports such as site surveys, site contamination assessment, geotechnical, and hydrogeological investigations. As part of the due diligence process, IO will conduct an EA process that includes consultation with project stakeholders. The intent is that at the end of the process, the potential environmental effects of the project can be identified and mitigated. The EA process typically lasts for approximately 6 months and consists of 3 steps. Step 1 is a letter with a project description issued to all project stakeholders and an opportunity for stakeholders to express their comment for a minimum of 30 days. Step 2, based on the comments received, mitigation measures are proposed. And step 3, the results are posted publicly for a period of 30 days for additional consultation. Thank you.
So we will now take a 10-minute break. I would just like to highlight the question and answer period at the end of the session, because I see your hands go up. What I'd like you to do is remember your question, and when we get to the end of the session, we will give you an opportunity to ask that question. So right now we're going to take a 10-minute break, and I just ask you to hold on to your questions until the Q&A period. Thank you.
you.